Yesterday was the deadline for putting the franchise tag on any player whose contract will otherwise expire on Wednesday, March 17 at 4 p.m. Eastern. Now, let's just enter this discussion acknowledging what the franchise tag is. Whatever word you apply to it, you can call it anything you want. It's a device for the teams to keep players from getting to the open market and maximizing their compensation, specifically into that second year, guaranteed money into that second year. You always get less under the franchise tag unless you've got general managers, owners, coaches who don't know what the hell you're doing. The player's getting less than he otherwise could have gotten by hitting the open market. This isn't a good thing. We explained that last week. It's not a positive thing. It's not an honor. It's not some sort of distinction or designation that the player gets a trophy for. It's a thing that keeps a player from getting what he should be getting, or at least delaying it for now. So, with that said, Chris, 10 franchise tags were extended on Tuesday. And let's dispense with Dak Prescott right out of the gates. We talked about this yesterday. That was done at his mandate, at his directive, to ensure that he'll never be tagged again. That's the first time that I think this has ever happened, where a guy does a long-term deal before the deadline for applying the tag, and he gets the team to apply the tag anyway because it helps in his quest to never be tagged again.
Right. No, I've never seen that. I don't. I mean, with me, in general, first off, I mean, that was a smooth move by Dak Prescott, his representation, all of that, certainly. And, back to the franchise thing, too. Yeah, it drives me crazy, just to make one comment on that. I don't like the franchise tag. As an ex-player, of course I don't. Why would I like the franchise tag? It's the only business in the world that has anything similar to that. Hey, you're one of the best there is out there, but we're not going to give you any long-term security. We're going to screw you over in one of the riskiest businesses, there is out there. And I understand they're going to make a big chunk of change, but it's still about market price, and that's where I hate the franchise tag, because it really does limit players and their ability sometimes to get that big payday, get that long-term security, and not have to worry about, I got injured and now everything's, down the drain.
We've been doing this for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Eventually, later this year, it'll be 4. That's how the passage of time works. I think I'm starting to get you to come around on my notion that the draft is anti-American and there's no other industry in which incoming employees are distributed that way here. Because at the core of what you just said about the franchise tag is the same concern. There's no other business where the employees get treated this way. You're punished for your success. You're restricted because you're good. You're due to earn, so you can't. That's the franchise tag. And Chris, here's the reality.
Right.
From time to time, I'll hear union or players or whoever say, well, the franchise tag's got to go. Well, it's not going anywhere because, first of all, the league has to put it on the table for negotiation within the confines of CBA discussions.
Right.
Second of all, if it ever would be on the table, think about the value that it has to a team. Think about the value it has to the league in holding down salary, because every guy that you tag is one less guy who can stretch that rubber band as far as possible and pull others with him, because now he's got a new record high contract that he gets on the open market. The value of the tag to the league would make the concession that the union would have to give to get the league to give up the tag astronomical. So it's never going away. It's always going to be part.
Yeah.
Watch, they'll get rid of it next year now that I said that.
No,
but I believe it's always going to be part of the fabric of the NFL because it's been there. And one last point. We were texting about this in the aftermath of that great photo of the quarterback club with Steve Young on his tiptoes like Cristiano Ronaldo and Phil with his hands on Jim Everett's shoulders, and just a great picture with Zubaz print everywhere.
Right.
That was the quarterback club that emerged in the aftermath of the shutting down of the union after the failed 1987 strike. There was a great antitrust lawsuit led by Reggie White. The players had the league on the ropes, and they settled for this CBA that has the franchise tag in it. I'm a firm believer they should have kept pushing. They should have kept going and going and going and going, and maybe there would have never been a franchise tag. So that's where it came from that antitrust litigation, and it's never leaving. And we just have to deal with it. But it's not a day of celebration for the players. It's a day of celebration for the ones who aren't tagged. it's not a day of celebration for the ones who are.
No, it's not. It's a little bit of like, oh, man, I'm not going to get a long-term contract. There is a little bit of, wait, I am the franchise guy, where you do feel special. I mean, of course, that there was that thought in the locker room as I was playing, like to go, hey, I'm the franchise guy. They were willing to give me that money and do that. But still, that's not what you want as a player, even though that guy could wear that as a badge of honor. And, yeah, I'm making a lot of money this 1 year. And, hey, I'm obviously important to the team. I'm the one guy they franchised. Nobody wants it. So, yes, and again, I'm not trying to sound like a spoiled brat and make players sound like spoiled brats too.
They're not spoiled.
I know.
They're not spoiled.
I know. But
they're entitled to make every last penny they can get.
I know, but I'm just, I'm going by, if you read the comments under some article you write about this on Pro Football Talk or anywhere, I know. But that's where, spoiled players and all they do is play football. I know. Screw them is right. Okay.
They're entitled to their opinion, but we're entitled to say screw them.
Yes, okay.
If they're just wrong.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, cool.
And those are the ones that don't get deleted. Those are the ones that make it past the screeners. You can imagine what people will say under the cloak of anonymity that comes from comments. And now we're starting down another track. I mean, speaking about pouring liquid into the trash can, we've come so close to pouring the comments section into the trash can, and that's an ongoing discussion. And who knows, that may be floating around somewhere with your liquid. All right, stay on target, Pete's telling me. Come on, Pete, making the Star Wars reference, although my tweet to announce that the show was starting is also a Star Wars reference, so I can't give Pete a hard time for that. Here we go, beyond Dak Prescott.
Right.
Finally, we're getting there.
Yeah.
The tags were distributed to 9 different players, and let's just talk through them as they pop up. Let's start with the guys tagged for the second straight year. Those are the guys who are either going to get long-term deals by July 15, or they will be free agents next year, because the franchise tag for Allen Robinson's not second straight year. Brandon Scherf, Leonard Williams, Justin Simmons are second straight year. Allen Robinson, we need to fix that graphic. Pete says it's his mistake. Pete apparently was not staying on target when he was putting this graphic together. Take that.
Chop his head off.
Scherf,
the hell with them.
Scherf, Leonard Williams, and Justin Simmons, they're not going to get tagged next year, so it's either long-term deal or they're going to be walking away in free agency after 2 years of being tagged, Chris. And, it's a big price tag. It's a 20% raise over their tag from last year, but it just shows you what the teams think of these guys, and it shows you how important it is to be able to keep these guys from walking away to the highest bidder, and these teams don't want to have to worry about someone else paying more for the services of these 3 players.
No, definitely not. And all 3 of those players are like huge parts of their football team. They got the teams backed into a corner a little bit because of the situation. Brandon Scherf, let's just start there. He's one of the best guards in football. And then even with the second-year franchise tag, it is not a number that you look at and go, well, this is ridiculous that they're paying him. No, it's not far off from what, if he signs a long-term deal, what his average per year contract will be. So to me, that was a no-brainer with Brandon Scherf and doing that. He's too good of a football player. You don't let that guy walk out the door. Leonard Williams, again, we know a really good football player, but he's got the leverage and the thing you've talked about many, many times, whether it was Jalen Ramsey or a few other guys, where they get traded, a team gives up, a decent haul for the guy, and now he's played really well, and he's one of the few guys that can pressure the quarterback on the football team. In fact, he's really the only guy. Everybody else we've talked about, it's about size. They're physical up front with the Giants, but he's the true disruptor of the group. So, yeah, they keep him, and I understand that. He's the only presence they got on the outside edge of the line, and he's versatile and can move inside and do a lot of things there. And we talked about Justin Simmons yesterday, who I think is one of the 3 best safeties in football, without question. And with him, with the Vic Fangio scheme and all that, and again, Mike, you look at that number and go, okay, even what he's making for a second-year franchise tag number, it's not astronomical to where you go, oh, that's crazy for 1 year for a free safety. Again, when you match it up with the other top average salaries at the position, it's right there with it. So to me, that it made sense. And I would think Scherf and Simmons for sure have a good chance of getting a long-term deal done. The Leonard Williams one, I think, might be a little tricky.
And, the reality is all these guys should have had their long-term deal last year in the form of either leaving through free agency or having their teams compete with these other franchises and paying more money to keep them around and giving them more security. And to get the second tag, that meant they had to survive the injury risk last year, survive the risk that maybe they weren't going to be as desirable, because trust me, none of these guys would have been tagged a second time if their teams didn't say, we must keep them based upon how they performed last year. Not, well, you know what, we did the franchise tag. It's, he regressed and now we're going to let him leave. These are all players who are highly desired by their teams and they are sticking around. So those are the three that were tagged a second time. And again, July 15, the clock now ticks toward that date as the deadline for a long-term deal. A couple of receivers got tagged. One, not a surprise. The other, to me, a surprise. Let's start with Allen Robinson, the Bears receiver. We saw this coming. We knew this was coming. We sensed it was coming. The Bears don't have a bunch of great players on offense. They're scrambling to find a quarterback, whoever their quarterback is. And what a feeling that's got to be for Allen Robinson.
Right.
Hey, I'm going to be with the team this year. I don't have any idea who the quarterback's going to be.
No, I mean, tough spot for him. There's no commitment for a long-term salary. At least he's been disgruntled about that really since the halfway point of last year. We started to hear those rumblings, right? And you said it right, Mike. I mean, he's one of the few real, maybe only, blue chipper on the whole offense to where you go, wait, this guy, we got to look at him and game plan for him a little bit. And we got to make sure in certain situations we got the right matchup. Again, I don't look at him as a top 5 receiver in football, Allen Robinson, but he's one of those guys that's in that top 10 conversation. Like we talked about last year, there's 20 receivers that you could say are in the top 10 conversation. But yes, either way, he's their most dangerous weapon on the offense. And, again, a team that seems in flux right now about what to do and are they going to make a move for Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson and all those type of things. You can't let him hit the free agent market. They need to keep him in case they maybe want to use him as, part of an asset to trade him as well. So for me, that was a no-brainer. Made a lot of sense that they kept Allen Robinson.
Not easy to trade a franchise tag player. He has to be fully on board with it. He has to sign his franchise tender first and foremost, because you can't trade a guy who is on the tag but has yet to accept the tag. And then after that, the new team is going to want a long-term deal most likely. They don't want to step into the shoes of the franchise tag team, and that makes it something that only is going to happen if the player wants to do it. And you talk about the prospect of trading Allen Robinson. If he would go to Seattle with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, that would be strange, to say the least, to have him at it. Now, it'd make for a great receiving core, but if you're a pass catcher and you want to catch passes and they don't know who the Seahawks quarterback is going to be, but they got DK Metcalf, Allen Robinson, and Tyler Lockett, it just seems like Robinson wouldn't get the kind of production that he had this past year when he had 102 receptions for 1,250 yards. And Robinson, I just asked the crew that works with me at PFT if this has happened before, how often it happens, because I think this is a rarity where a guy gets franchise tagged not on the completion of his rookie contract. This is a guy who finished his 4-year rookie deal in Jacksonville, left as a free agent, spent 3 years with the Bears, and now is getting tagged after 7 NFL seasons and 2 teams. Usually it's 4 or 5 years out after you've been drafted. That's when you get franchise tagged by the team that drafted you. So I'm curious if there's some way to research that and see how many guys are like this. I think Phil Dawson has been in that boat, but if you set aside kickers and punters, I don't think guys get tagged very often.
Barrett in our
well,
year.
that's right,
That's
Shaq Barrett. Exactly.
Yeah,
That's a good one. Denver, 4 years, went to Tampa for a year, got tagged. So that's another guy who has moved as a free agent already, but then had the door slammed in his face. So maybe it's not as rare as I'm thinking.
No, I think it is, Mike. I think you're right. I think you're right.
The usual path is finish your rookie contract and get tagged or not tagged. Chris Godwin, the guy who got tagged in Tampa instead of Shaq Barrett. That's what surprised me. And when I saw the news that the Bucs were going to tag receiver Chris Godwin, a guy that I thought they could afford to let walk away given the depth at the position, and they needed to keep Barrett, I thought, well, we're going to hear that later today Shaq Barrett has a long-term deal. They're talking, but he doesn't have a long-term deal. So they may see Shaq Barrett walk away in free agency, Chris, because they have no way to keep him from leaving now that they used their one and only one tag on Chris Godwin.
No, it's that was I think the splash of the day. Added to right? First, they got the Levante David contract. We saw that get done, and you went, whoa, okay. That's not a crazy price. Pretty manageable for what they did there. Wow, great job by Jason Light and the Bucks re-signing Levante David. There you go. And then, yeah, I expected to hear Shaquille Barrett as the franchise guy as well. Either way, Chris Godwin is worthy of being tagged. He is that type of talent. There's no doubt about that. And he's just hitting the prime of his career. So he's got lots of years in front of him, and I'm sure they don't want to see him walk out the door. But when you get into, like, the conversation, too, about Shaq Barrett, yeah, it's either, like, it's either, one, they felt like, okay, we're going to get a deal done with him that's pretty manageable, or it's two, holy crap, he's really priced himself out of this, and this is an issue here, and I don't know if we're going to re-sign him. And I don't know. I have no inside info on where that goes, but to me, that's at least the two things that seem to be apparent here. I don't know. How do you got any feel for that?
Well, I was surprised that Godwin got the tag,
yeah,
because they already have Mike Evans,
right,
and they're paying him a significant amount. Rarely can you see a team afford to put that much money into two receivers. They can do it for one,
yeah,
but you typically can't do it for two. It's not unprecedented, but it's hard to do it for two. Secondly, with so many great young receivers every year now coming out in the draft, I feel like dollar for dollar,
yeah,
and every team goes through this exercise, dollar for dollar. You can't justify tying up that much money in a position where, look, they found Tyler Johnson last year, and they like Tyler Johnson. You bump him up and you backfill with another rookie. And you've got Scotty Miller, a guy that you drafted, or was even undrafted. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But a young guy who's still working his way through the system who isn't making much money. Drafted or not, he's not making much money. Dollar for dollar, that's what you have to ask yourself. And that's what stunned me. Now, with Shaq Barrett, it very well could be that he wants so much that,
right,
like you said, they just know they can't do it.
Right.
And we've mentioned a few times how many pass rushers are hitting the market. They can just do what they did 2 years ago when they signed Shaq Barrett. He comes in as a stranger, and he has 19 sacks.
No.
So they'll find another pass rusher to come in. Maybe you can get 2 or 3 pass rushers for less than what it would cost to keep Shaq Barrett for a year.
No, I mean, you're right, Mike. You made that point on text yesterday. And when you said it, I went, ooh, that's a really good point. That might be part of the equation. You're right. With the fact that if he's asking for some huge, and what was going to be his franchise tag? Going
$18.99 million.
$18.99 million. So I don't know what he's asking for, but there is a lot of guys out there, like you're talking about, on the edge, right, who won't be able to command Shaquille Barrett type money. And he's a guy, again, he was a middle round pick, if I remember correctly, coming out of Colorado State, drafted by Denver, doing all that. He's just starting to make money. So he might be one of those guys that looks at it and goes, listen, I love the Bucks and I'd love to be here for a winner, but it's time for, Big Daddy here to get paid, right? So he might be one of those that goes, I need the money. I want some security, some long-term stuff and all of that. And that becomes an issue. Okay. But then, yes, to your point, there's guys out there like Leonard Floyd, for an example, and a lot of other players to where you go, wow, that's a really good player that's not going to be able to command $18 million a year or anything in that ballpark. And I think that makes a lot of sense, and I can see that. Yannick Ngakoue, can he command that kind of money out on the market? I don't think so, not at this point. It's a good chunk of change, and I don't expect it to be him. But just adding to your point, there are a lot of good edge pass rushers out there.
And that's what's amazing, because we are reminded from time to time, specifically in the Super Bowl, how important it is to have great pass rushers. And then we kind of forget about it, and then we're reminded of it again by some dominant pass rushing performance in the Super Bowl. So this is a valuable position. I would put quarterback, pass rusher, tackle. I don't know. How do you rank them as overall value? Is pass rusher more valuable than a tackle?
I think so. I do. Yes. Yeah. I think I look at that and just go, a pass rusher, an elite pass rusher can affect the game in so many ways. And tackle, of course, is very important for all the reasons to block those guys. But, man, a really elite defense end, they affect the run game. They can be great that way. And then, of course, the amount of, forget the sacks and things like that, it's the disruption, it's the quarterback pressures, everything that helps the secondary. So I would say that's probably the number 2 thing on my list too.
And that's what makes it amazing that so many of them are going to be floating around, and that's got to be factoring into the Buccaneers' thinking. This isn't something they just randomly did. This isn't just, well, Tommy wants his receiver here, so we have to keep the receiver, and we'll just have to figure something out on defense. Defense has to be a priority. Their defense has been a key part of that championship run. That defense helped them in many situations. That defense kept the Packers from parlaying 3 consecutive Tom Brady interceptions into a victory, what would have been a stunning come-from-behind victory. They were down 28-10, Green Bay was. The defense stiffened on 2 of those 3 drives and kept the Packers from taking the lead. And then we know what happened. Yeah, down at the end. I assume that was one of the drives from resulting from one of the interceptions where they almost scored the touchdown and
didn't go for it on 4th down
and didn't go for it on 4th down. Yeah, so defense important, but maybe they think they can find another Shaq Barrett and not have to pay that kind of money. Barrett did say not that long ago he wants to break the bank. So we know that his objective is to get paid maximum dollars, and to get maximum dollars, he may have to go somewhere else.
That's where, when you really look at it and you hear those comments and just – That was my first thought, like I said, that he might be asking for, they realized, man, this is going to be a 1-year thing, and he's out of here because he's looking to break the bank. And listen, from Shaquille Barrett's standpoint, he can look at other defense ends in football right now and go, wait, I've been better than these guys for 3 years now, and they're making a ton of money. And here, I'll just throw out some names. I mean, he certainly can look at Demarcus Lawrence and Frank Clark, who I got a lot of respect for Frank Clark and what he does. But he can look at them realistically and go, wait, I've been better than them for 2 or 3 years now. He can look at Trey Flowers, who went from New England to the Detroit Lions, who's making $18 million a year, and go, I'm definitely better than him. There's no doubt about it. So I affect the game in more areas and do all those type of things. So from that standpoint, you look at it, and I look at Shaquille Barrett, and I'm not mad at him if he's asking for $20 million a year and north of that for where the market is and things like that, and he's the next guy up and all of that. So it'll be interesting to watch what happens with him here as we go along.
And it's not just looking at the guys who are going to hit the market. It's considering the guys who may still yet hit the market. Von Miller and the Broncos have yet to figure out their situation. The Broncos obviously and reportedly want Von Miller to take less than $18 million this year. If he hits the market, we don't know what kind of conversations he and Tom Brady have been having. There's all sorts of tampering that isn't really tampering that happens among players. The idea of Tom and Von reuniting or uniting, they've never been united before except on opposite sides of the ball in Tampa, that's just one of the paths that the Buccaneers can take.
It is.
And that's where the challenge becomes forgetting who the guy is, forgetting what he's done, and saying we got to make a good decision. And the other side of this, too, and this may be why Barrett wants so much money. I mean, he knows what else is out there. All it takes is one owner to say, I want that guy, I want that guy, I want that guy. And you know what? His team is going to pay that guy.
Sure.
And that getting that guy who was part of a Super Bowl run and making him the centerpiece of your free agency class and also hurting the Buccaneers or thinking you're hurting the Buccaneers, that's part of this game too. There's a strong business component to free agency. I've seen every year at this time we see the articles and the analyses which point to a conclusion that we already know. You don't build a championship team in free agency by spending big money.
No.
You do it by being smart and waiting for the market to settle and shopping for bargains. But you build a successful financial operation in part by creating excitement by going out and overpaying a free agent because you get season ticket renewals, you sell jerseys, you take attention away from other leagues, teams in other leagues in your market. There are business reasons for it to happen that are independent of whether or not it's ever going to help you win a Super Bowl. And that's part of the reality. And even in a year with a reduced cap, Chris, there's going to be teams that want to make that splash, especially as we recover from the pandemic. We start thinking about selling tickets for 2021. It helps to sell tickets if you can say, we got Shaq Barrett away from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
No doubt about that. There is that aspect. Some teams looking to make a splash, just get, in the good favor of the fans, get a little hype and propaganda going about, hey, we're doing the right things as an organization here. We're trying to win and do that. And that could very easily be Shaq Barrett. He would fit that mold too, to where you're not going to have to pay him to be the highest paid defensive end in the history of football or anything like that. But you're going to be able to give him a splash contract and go, look, did you see what he did? Did you see all those highlights of him chasing down Mahomes and all over him? And did you see all those big sacks he had against Aaron Rodgers in that game? Yeah, the guy's big time. He shows up in big moments, and that will excite a fan base to what you're saying.
All right, some other guys who were tagged. Let's move to the offensive line other than Brandon Scherf. Taylor Moton, Panthers, and Cam Robinson, Jaguars, a couple of teams that entered the league together in 1995. Moton, not a surprise. Cam, a mild surprise, although the possibility of Cam Robinson being tagged was on the radar screen, and Urban Meyer explained yesterday the thought process. The new coaching staff looked carefully at Cam Robinson and decided they needed to keep him, and they've got the cap space to do it, so they're keeping him from hitting free agency.
Yeah, I mean, that was a surprise to me, but when you break it down and what Urban Meyer said, again, it goes into a little bit of like, it's the overall state of the offensive line that I think gets taken into an account here, where Urban Meyer looks at it and goes, wait, a little bit like Allen Robinson with the Bears. He goes, well, this is the really only quality offensive lineman we got on the football team here. Everything else is a little bit, dicey here. There's no like mainstay dominant football player. And Cam Robinson's real good. Is he worth, franchise tag type money? Not to me, he's not. But when you take in the current, situation and the things he's talking about, he's trying to build something. He's going to draft Trevor Lawrence. Well, okay, we got a pretty good one that we think we can make him better to draft it and protect Trevor Lawrence and do those type of things. So from all that standpoint, it makes sense. Yeah, I don't think he's one of the 3 or 4 or 5 best tackles in football. I don't. And I think most people would agree with that. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but I think when you take in the whole team and roster into account, it does make sense for what Urban said.
Safeties also got tagged yesterday beyond Justin Simmons. Marcus Williams of the Saints.
Yeah.
That was a surprise. Marcus May of the Jets was not. And what surprised me about the Saints, all the cap issues we're talking about, right. I figured they'd be the last team to consider using the tag on anyone.
I went through this exercise on my podcast like 2 weeks ago, and we talked about Marcus Williams, and now he's a guy that is worthy of the franchise tag, but I didn't think they would do it, not with the current state of where they're at. I mean, holy cow, do they got a lot of work to do in New Orleans. What are they going to do here? I know you can make it work and do a lot of stuff, but they are – Where is their current status, Mike, right now as far as the salary cap? I mean, it's way, way over still. I mean, way over. I want to say it's – there we go. Here's Pete, Johnny on the spot. Yeah, I was going to say it's close to $60 million.
Wow.
So they got a lot of fat to trim. Holy cow. And I'm going to be interested to see who goes by the wayside and what they can do to make this happen.
Well, I know one guy that very well could be gone in the next week, and that's Marshawn Lattimore. He's got an 8-figure salary in his option year coming up. It becomes fully guaranteed on the first day of the league year. Unless he takes less, he could be gone. That's an easy way to take a chunk out of that, but you still got a lot more that you have to do, a lot of work that needs to be done. They've been restructuring contracts, and they're still in that spot. Now, the problem this time of year is that the numbers like the one we just put up doesn't always reflect recent efforts to reduce the cap. So, they're getting close, so they're doing what they can. And Mickey Loomis, who received plenty of praise on Twitter yesterday for somehow, some way figuring it out. And that's the reality. They will find a way to figure it out. They'll do whatever they have to do, period. Yeah. And if they have to just cut guys, they're going to cut guys.
Well, that's where you look at it, all right? And you just try to look at, okay, who's the guys that – got a big cap hit, and there's a good difference between the cap hit and the dead money and what there is there to be had. You talked about Marshawn Lattimore. Okay, yeah, that's right. They could take a huge chunk off, like you said, $10 million. A look at Janoris Jenkins, who played really good football last year, but they could save around $7 million with him. Teron Armstead. Yeah, real good left tackle, but has been injured and getting up there in years. They can save another $7 million with him. Are they going to make those type of moves? That's what I'm interested to see here with Mickey Loomis, Sean Payton, and kind of how they orchestrate their team here going forward. And it just looks to me on the outside looking in that they're going to have to make some uncomfortable moves here and cut some guys that they don't want to cut. But that's just the reality of the situation.
One thing that I've been looking at is the possibility of a Michael Thomas trade.
Yeah.
Because remember, there was some discussion along those lines when the relationship went south during the season. But if they would trade him pre-June
It hurts them,
they
right?
are looking at, my gosh, they are looking at $20 million in acceleration.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they would avoid $12 million or so in payment to him, almost $13 million in payment, but you're going to take a $20 million cap charge to trade him. Post-June 1, they could pull it off, but that's a guy that's going to be very hard to chop his down. But you basically have to go player by player, line by line, contract by contract, and see what fat can we trim here? What can we do here to maybe push some money into future years, or get a guy to take a pay cut where we're not moving money around, or just get rid of the guy altogether? And then what are the cap consequences if he's traded or if he's released? And that's what a good general manager has to do. The problem this year for every team, and specifically for the teams that already were going to be pressed up against the cap, you've got $15.7 million left. That's the expected drop.
Right.
I'm told it's almost definitely going to be 182.5. That's 15.7 less than what it was going to be. So it's going to make it more of a challenge. Drew Brees did them a hell of a favor by dropping his base salary from 25 to the minimum of 1.075. But even then, that was just the first cut. They still have a lot to do to get this figured out. And now they've got an 8-figure salary that will be devoted to Marcus Williams that they need to get figured out. And here's the other side of it too. Until he signs it, they can rescind it if they wanted to. They're not bound by this. If they just get to a point where we can't get from here to there, as they're figuring out the cap, and they need another $10 million, they just rescind the tag.
The old Josh
for Marcus
Norman
Williams,
move. Right?
As long as he doesn't sign it. Once he signs it, and if you're Marcus Williams, you may want to think about, checkmate here and saying, I'll take that. I'll take that 8-figure salary, but they could always pull it away, and that could be a way that they help get to where they are. But, yeah, it's not going to be easy. A lot of sleepless nights for Mickey Loomis and his staff coming up over the course of the next week.
Yeah, really. I mean, it really is. And, again, they're still a team that you look at and go, wow, they're a quality football team. Yeah, they're a year older. But even without Drew Brees, I expect the Saints to be very relevant next year. But I mean, you got to see how this all shakes out, because they're going to have to make some tough decisions. I don't know if that's going to be via the trade, things like that, whatever. But they're going to have to get real creative here. As creative as I can remember any top team in the league here in recent history. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I was kind of trying to think about it, on the drive in here to the show today. Like, I don't remember a team like a Saints, upper echelons, cream of the crop type of football
There
team.
we go.
Yep, I'm getting there.
No, you're not. You said upper echelons
you're right,
again.
Upper echelon. You're right, upper echelon. Sorry. It rolls off the tongue way better.
Upper echelon.
Lawn, there's no T in there?
N.
Oh, there is no
There's
T
no
in there.
T.
The hell with it. I don't care if I ever get it right, so don't worry. Don't even
Some
fix
of these
me next
things
time.
we fix with one, some it's a process. We got him to take the S off of upper echelons. Now we got to get him to drop the T and just call it upper echelon. That's the next phase.
But do you remember a team ever like that has...
Not like this.
Right.
Well, I remember a team like the Titans at one point where they just accepted that for this year they were in cap purgatory. So, there's certain things they couldn't do. And, I remember teams scrambling to make sure they had enough cap space left to sign their draft picks. That used to be pre-2006, really. That used to be an issue. It started to subside after the 2006 CBA, and after 2011, you rarely hear of it. The Steelers and the Cowboys are really the only teams you ever hear of having to scramble to create cap space. And this whole idea of restructuring contracts, you don't avoid the cap dollars. You just push them into future years. But as the cap keeps going up and up and up, those dollars have a lower relative value. There's deflation, because a dollar today under this cap means a hell of a lot less under a future cap when there's more dollars to spend. And that's what teams do. That's part of what the Saints are going to have to do. Push money into future years. Of course, one of the problems is past money from Drew Brees pushed into this year. That's one of the reasons why they're in this mess. When you kick the can, at some point there's a reckoning. And if the cap drops, that's when the reckoning arrives.
Yeah.
Chris's reckoning is arriving, at least the first phase of it, because he multitasked during the first segment, unless someone else posted the tweet. The poll so far. Now, this is very, very early returns. That's only 125 votes. We're up to 1,900, and it's worse. It's 81.9% no, you monster, on the question of whether it's okay to pour liquid into a trash can. Your first response, though, says yes, as long as I'm the one who has to take out the trash. Thank you very much, Dan Turco, with an umlaut over the O, so it may not be Turco.
I don't buy this bull crap right here, okay? I think we got a lot of Twitter users right now that are you kidding me? How many of them throw in, like, you know, a huge thing of Coke, a 32-ouncer Big Gulp or something like that, and they throw it away with 10 ounces left in there? That's some baloney. I don't think people are being real about this.
I think they're being accurate, and I think they're being reasonable, and I think they're being fair to whoever has to deal with the mess that is left in the trash can.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.